We are live. Welcome to episode 118 of Black Belt Startup with Ferris. Thank you for tuning in. What's new in the world of entrepreneurship? Well, we're in the second of my three-part series on professional win-win negotiation for consultants. Now, I know for many new consultants, sales feels hard and awkward, and the negotiation can feel even worse. And that's exactly how I felt when I started because you don't want to be pushy. You don't want to pressure someone into saying yes. And you definitely don't want to become that salesperson everyone tries to avoid. So, in these sessions, I won't be sharing, I know some of those gimmicky and sleazy sales tactics, but I won't be covering those. Actually, next session, next week, I'll be recommending that you avoid these gimmicky and sleazy tactics. But I want to focus on learning how to have professional conversations, how to understand what the client really needs, the value that you offer, and how you can stand behind your value, and then how to reach an agreement that works for both you and the client. And for those of you who did not have the chance to attend last session last week, I covered 5 steps on how to prepare for a negotiation. See, negotiation doesn't start after you send the proposal. It sort of starts from the very first day, from the very first interaction you have with a client. So I'll summarize those 5 prep points as we get into it. But today I want to focus on the 7 practices that will help you negotiate a fair deal, a winning deal, and win deals so that you grow the business, you make sure you deliver value, and then the client also feel that they got something worth what they're investing in. And I've learned these lessons through very expensive mistakes over 20 plus years of selling consulting services, including some really silly things that I wish I had learned way back then. I would have gotten to 6 figures and 7 figures much sooner had I learned those mistakes. But hey, that's what entrepreneurship is all about. You make mistakes, you learn from those mistakes, and then you move on and you go back at it. And that's for those of you who are new to the channel. My name is Ferris. Thank you for tuning in. And that's my mission today. After building 7 businesses, mostly in consulting, a couple grew to 7 figures and one to 8 figures that I later sold to a global media giant called Dentsu. So after all these years, my mission now is that to pass on this knowledge, everything I've learned about starting, growing, scaling a business, the challenges that you have if you're thinking about taking the leap, the issues that you face in sales, in marketing, in hiring people. This is what my YouTube channel and the content that I produce is all about, is to helping you as a new consultant start stronger and smarter. Or if you are still working for someone, or maybe you were recently laid off, you're thinking of taking the leap and you're not sure how to do it, how to vet the idea, how to validate that what you are about to offer will resonate with clients. I have in the different playlists and different videos, I have content to help you achieve your goal. The goal here is, again, to help you start stronger and smarter and then achieve your dream of building an amazing company, reach financial independence, create a really cool culture, lifelong relationships along the way, and of course, offer value to your clients. So if these are your goals, you are in the right place. I'm not the channel, the YouTube channel, and the content I produce is not about getting rich quick. Those schemes are not what I cover here. There are plenty of them out there. Be very vigilant. Be very worried if someone tells you that you can get $100,000 to $100,000 revenue in 1 month or in 2 months or 3 months. It doesn't work that way. I've been in Silicon Valley for close to 30 years. I haven't seen anyone who has done well in business and succeeded in tech or in consulting who did not work really hard and earned the right to say that I made it in business and I reached 7 figures or 8 figures or beyond. It does require a lot of discipline, a lot of hard work. It does take a lot of commitment, a lot of resilience. All of these things are learnable. So if you're open to that, I'm here to support you on your journey. Um, I don't want to make it sound too difficult for you to start and to get some traction, but I also don't want to make it sound so easy that you'll get disappointed, that you'll burn out. So hopefully, with the tips, with the framework, with the systems that I have, it will be easier for you, and then you'll get your journey faster than if you were doing it on your own. It took us almost 7, 8 years to reach 7 figures in the very first business. My co-founder and I, and the team with us. And then from all these lessons and all these mistakes, when we started a second business, it took us 4 years, almost half the time, to reach 7 figures. So there is something to be said about a process, about systems, about learning from other people's journey. So I hope, again, you find this content useful, and reach out to me. Let me know. I'm here to answer your questions. Leave me a comment on whichever platform you're on LinkedIn, on YouTube. I'd love to hear from you about the challenges that you're facing, and also if you're overcoming these challenges and you have wins, small wins, big wins. I want to hear about them as well, and I want to benefit the community from what you all are doing. And for those of you who haven't announced to the world that you're about to launch a business, or that you're starting your own business, and maybe you don't feel like you want to leave a public comment about the question that you're having, email me at info@startupwithfaris, Faris spelled like my first name, Feras, and I read all these emails. I keep them confidential. I'll get back to you. Again, my goal is to help you succeed, to help you start smarter and stronger. So with that, let's step on the mat. So as I said earlier, last week we covered the 5 steps that you want to do ahead of any negotiation. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on those because we covered them. I covered them last week, but let me just share one slide that we prepared here for you. Give me just one sec. Okay, my mouse is acting up now. Nice. Okay. So here you go. So this is, and you can leave me a comment if you like a copy of those slides. But these are the 5 things to prep for any negotiation. And it's not, again, reframe the fight. The first step is, it's really, some of it is just mindset related. It's not a fight. It's not a battle. It's not war. You are exchanging what you offer, your solution, for the problem, to solve a problem that a client has, and they're compensating you for that. So you want to reframe the battle, the war, the fight to it's a conversation, it's a negotiation that is going to create value for everyone involved. The second thing I covered last week was about tactical empathy. This is from the well-known Chris Voss, the chief FBI negotiator. He talks about a lot of people want you to agree with them, and a lot of people also want to know that they feel heard and understood. So tactical empathy is all about that, is making sure that you hear the client. And in sales and negotiation, the idea here is that to understand if they're asking for a concession, if they're asking for a discount, if they're asking for a compressed timeline, understand why they're asking for that. And you might be able to reach a winning solution based on your understanding of the issue. Again, I went into a lot of details, and I covered scenarios, real scenarios, last week's live stream, so you can check it out on the channel. But I'm quickly here summarizing. The other thing here is, hold on one second. Yeah, we're still here. Good. Slide is defining your boundaries. This is really part of the proposal, what you propose verbally or what you put in writing as a formal proposal. What are the sort of the red lines? Like, for example, you cannot deliver your service in less than 2 weeks, no matter how much money they give you, no matter how much how much support you can get from the client. You need 2 weeks. So if the client is negotiating this thing to be done in 1 week, you have to tell them, convince them otherwise, or just not take it, because you will fail miserably if you know for sure you cannot deliver in less than 2 weeks, or if you know you're not going to below a certain price point. That's another. So set your boundaries. That's point number three. Point number four is build trust first. This is by demonstrating authority, the questions that you ask. They know that this consultant, he knows the industry really well. He knows our issues. He solves some similar problems. So that's point number four. And then all of this you can do ahead of talking to the lead. You want to be prepared. Some of it requires some practice. Some ask you certain questions. And then the fifth preparation point is on setting expectations early. This is really part of the scoping the scoping process to make sure that you have a thorough proposal with specific deliverables, what's included, what's not included, what you want the client to do, what is it that you're doing. And I have an ultimate guide on winning proposals, and it is an hour and 4 minute video, very thorough, with a lot of worksheets and a lot of templates that you can use right away. So if you're struggling with setting expectations and writing winning proposals, you want to check out this video. At the end of the session, I'll go to the channel, I'll show you what these videos are. And one last thing here before I move to the 7 practices that you can apply as the situations arise. Before we go there, I want to, with all this talk about negotiation, and I'm spending a whole lot of time on it because it's important, because a lot of new consultants, they're technical, they're great people, they're amazing, knowledgeable, skilled specialists, but they struggle with sales, and they struggle with marketing, and they struggle with proposals, and they struggle with pricing, and they struggle with negotiation, because I struggle with all of these. And I speak with 2 to 3 founders every week on the average, and I hear this all the time. So I want you to learn the science of negotiation, just like 1 + 1 = 2, but also there's the art of negotiation, which comes with practice. So if you're not winning a deal today, if you're struggling to close a project tomorrow, this is just part of this entrepreneurial journey. So you learn from this. I want you to learn from these experiences, and that's why I have these lessons, all from the trenches. So don't beat yourself too hard if you're not closing deals right away. Part of it is just learning how to do things properly, and part of it is just requires the reps. And initially, again, with all this talk about negotiation, initially, if you haven't closed any deals yet, or if you're struggling to close your first few deals, I want you to just sell. Don't worry too much about pricing. You're not going to make a ton of profit in most cases on your first project. There's just so many things that you have to learn and do, and you underestimate the scope, and you underestimate how long it's going to take you, and you underestimate the amount of money that you need to pay maybe to a subcontractor. So all of those, initially, what I want you to focus on is selling and getting those clients what they're looking for. And you bend over backward to make these clients happy. They'll be your references. They'll send you referrals. They'll write your testimonials. They'll write you case studies. That is really, really essential. It's always important to take care of your clients, but it is essential early on. It's critical. Without it, you can't really grow the business. So initially, I want you to learn all these negotiation techniques and all these practices. But initially, if you're not selling, don't negotiate too hard initially. Just close the deal. Get that client. Make them happy. Get the testimonial. All right? And then you can upsell them and do other things in the future. Cool. So a lot of good stuff here we covered, again, last week. Quick here intro on selling. So now let's get into the 7 practices. And again, for those of you who are just joining us, thank you for being here. If you have any question about sales, about negotiation, leave it in the comments, and I'll make sure I'll address all of that today. And then if you want to email me something very specific, something maybe a bit private about your business, email me at info@startupwithferris.com. All right. The first of the 7 practices, use a budgetary quote. So early in your sales discovery, when you're meeting clients, when you're meeting prospects, when you're maybe you meet someone at a networking event or someone emails you and you follow up, you won't know enough about what's involved. So let's say you are a workflow automation consultant and now you're leveraging AI to come in and help companies adopt AI properly and revisit their workflows in hiring, in accounting, in marketing, you name it. And that's your specialty. So you speak with someone at a conference or at a meetup, and they say, "Yeah, we are dead serious about adopting AI, and we want to work with someone who can help us get there uh, quick." So I say, "Hey, that's what I do for a living. I've been doing process automation for the last 10 years, and then for the last couple of years, I've been focused on AI, and I have these certifications." So they're impressed. Now I say, "Okay, how much does your service cost?" So at this point, you don't have a whole lot of input from the client to give a fixed price quote. Or if you're selling hourly, you say, yeah, my hourly rate is 150 or 200 or 125 or 75, depending. But you don't know how many hours this could take. So a lot of people ask about pricing early on, a lot of buyers, and that's fair. They want to make sure it's reasonable, whatever that means in their mind. So what I want you to do is, if you don't know what's involved yet, don't give a fixed price right away. You can say, for example, so far, based on what I've heard, and let's say you've asked them how many departments do they have, how many people they have, and let's say you figured out it's a mid-sized company. Let's say they have 40 people. And by the way, the definition of a small business, according to the Small Business Association and the governmental website, it's any business below 500 people. So in my mind, that's really not a small business if you have 500 people. But let's say you're working with a company. The lead has the owner has a business with 40 people. Okay, so they probably have a sales manager, a marketing manager, and they have maybe a COO. So you make some assumptions in your mind. And you can say, based on what I've heard so far, based on what I've learned so far, a project for a company your size with automation of 5 workflows is anywhere between $7,500 and 12,500. So now you gave a range. It is a bit of a wide range between 7.5 and 12.5, but you give them an idea. So it's not vague. You're not trying to dance around pricing. You said, based on what I've learned so far, this is the range of a project, this scope. And this is sort of the follow-up question or the follow-up statement, is as I get to know more about the business, I'll be more than happy to give you a fixed price quote. Or if you're selling hourly, you tell them how many hours this project will take. So now the whole tension about how much it's going to cost and you're not sure, you gave a range, and you set some parameters, and you said, as I dig deeper, I will give you I'll give you a fixed price. Now, if you start to dig deeper and you notice that this is a sort of cutting edge company, and they have people and they're a virtual company, and they have a lot of processes and a lot of systems, you can go back and say, hey, after digging some more, I told you I can work on 5 workflows: one for sales, one for marketing, one for finance, one for operations, one for HR. I noticed that you have 8 or 9 workflows. So let's focus on the top 5, the highest priority 5s, where we can have the biggest impact on revenue or cost savings, right? So you've given some parameters early on, which will allow you to come back and revisit the price. So you're not stuck with a quote. So giving a budgetary quote is helpful in in these scenarios. So now the question to you, for those of you who are listening live, or for if you're listening or watching later, you give a $5,000 to $10,000 range for a service that you offer, and let's say the client responds with, "We're thinking closer to 3K." Okay, so let me play the scenario one more time. You're thinking, you tell them, um, a project of this scope is anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000. The client comes back and says, "We were thinking closer to $3,000." So, what do you ask next? Again, for those of you, unless you're driving, if you're listening and driving, don't type, don't text. But if you're watching here and you can text, how would you respond to that? It says, "We were thinking closer to $3,000. This is $2,000 below your sort of minimum boundary." So that's what actually leads to my next point here. I'll wait a minute here to see if someone is uh, is typing in the answer. But if someone is giving you a much lower number than your bare minimum, I would go back and apply the second practice, which is, let's discuss the scope and let's define the scope precisely. So, what do I mean by that? So, in our example, the above example about workflow automation, again, you can apply your own example. It could be a cybersecurity assessment, it could be someone who provides marketing consulting, or they do speaking, they're a speaking agent, or they help with HR, or you name it, any type of consultancy. There is a scope to be defined. What is it that you're doing for the client? So if the client is negotiating, and I'll talk about other practices that you can apply, but just to answer that hypothetical, and it's not very hypothetical, it does happen a lot. Because sometimes people, I just want to negotiate. They'll just drop a number to see if you come down, right? So you can tell them, "Well, when I told you $5,000 to $10,000, this is what I had in mind. I had 5 workflows in mind. If you can only invest $3,000 with us this time around, well, let's focus on 2 or 3 workflows." So this way, you narrow down the scope for a smaller amount. So that would be one quick way to answer that question. But the point here, the second point I want to cover, and I have a slide actually on these 7 points. I'll show it here in a bit. But basically, I really want you to spend time defining the scope. And again, early on, if you're just starting out, you won't know everything that's involved. So you might sell something that you think will take you 10 hours, it might end up taking you 20 hours. Again, initially, that's okay. Absorb that. If you can't, if you can't get compensated for the time you put in initially, that's okay. You can't build a business with that mindset. So I keep emphasizing what you do initially to get the first few clients is completely different than what you do later when you have the testimonials and you have the case studies and you feel more confident that you can sell and deliver. So there's two different mindsets and 2 different approaches for the very first few clients versus later when you're a bit more established. You can be more choosy, you can be more selective when you have cash flow and you have revenue and you have logos. So we'll get to that. We'll talk about that later. But for now, about defining the scope precisely, I want you to, I'll share with you an example when we were building websites. This is back in 2003. That was cutting edge. For those of you who are laughing now, you build websites for small businesses. Now you can do it literally. You can go on one of those services and build a website in 5 minutes. Okay, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, you're done. Our very first website that we sold, it took us 3 months, 3 months to deliver a 4-page website. No e-commerce, nothing. So early in that phase of our journey, we were starting to get into medium-sized businesses and larger projects with nicer margins. So we were speaking with a client and they showed us their website, and we were starting to do websites and also some online marketing, and then also some analytics before we got to specialize into analytics, and later became one of the Google certified partners. And then later we became the number one Google certified partner in analytics globally. But early on, so we didn't know how to scope. We didn't know how to ask the right questions. So he said, okay, we'll build up your website, and then once it's done, we'll have some SEO work done, and then we'll do analytics. We'll implement analytics on the website, and it's going to be, I forgot how much we charged them at the time, maybe $10,000 or so, $8,000, I think. So all good. Signed the contract. Very excited. As we're wrapping up the work, he said, the client, the owner said, "Hey, and by the way, I've been working with this other developer because I want to have this e-commerce component to the website, and they'll just plug it right there to the web on one of the pages. And of course, that's how he said, of course, you'll add the search engine optimization and the analytics to this section of the website." So, so I think that wasn't over an email. So I kind of, oh my goodness, what do I do? What do I tell this person? I mean, doing search engine optimization, SEO work, and doing analytics for a static website, no e-commerce, is one scope and one level of effort. Doing analytics and search engine optimization on an e-commerce website, it's a different ballpark altogether. So, but we didn't, in his mind, the client, he thought we covered the whole website. I don't think he was trying to be smart or he just didn't know. And we didn't specify that no e-commerce was included. E-commerce would be an option in the contract. So to make that client happy, we ended up doing the work, learned a bit more about e-commerce, learned what to include, what to exclude in the proposal, in the next proposal. And it ended up taking us 3 times as much as expected, as planned, to complete the work. But we made the client happy. We had the logo, we had the testimonial, but we lost money on that project. So that's why I emphasize focusing on defining the scope. And again, in the scope, in this ultimate guide to winning proposals, I spent a fair amount of time on what you put in your proposal, and also what you say early on in the conversations. Because the proposal is not just the document that you send when the client says, send me the contract or the proposal. Proposing and selling starts from the very first moment you interact with the client. It starts with you establishing authority about your knowledge of the industry, about your knowledge of the client's pain points, about your approach to things. All of that is part of sales and negotiation. So what you say, what you write, what information you send is going to be really, really helpful. So in one of your conversations or in one of your emails, you mention a price, a point. You say, yeah, typically it's $5,000. You can't go back and say it'll be $25,000. You have to then sort of convince them why you changed on them. And if you tell someone I can do this work in 3 weeks, and then later when they see the proposal, the actual formal document, and it says it'll take us 7 weeks, they start to question your authority, your knowledge, like, what is this person doing? It's bait and switch or what have you. So be very careful and watch that video on writing proposals, because I walk you through how you position yourself and you position your services early on before we get to the formal proposal. So this is the second point. The third point, and let me show you, actually, let me share my slide here. Give me 1 second, right here. So earlier I showed you the 5 things to prep for any negotiation, and that was from last week's live stream. But today here I have, these are the seven practices. The first one we talked about so far: use a budgetary quote. The second one is define the scope precisely. Now the third one is negotiate payment terms. So payment terms, this is something that I really want you to pay attention to. a lot of times, well, for those of you who are maybe new to selling, when it comes to payment terms, let me just give you a quick background here. So if you sold something for $10,000, right? That's your revenue. When you send the contract to your accountant, your bookkeeper, okay, $10,000 in revenue. That's great. But that's different than when people actually pay you. So payment terms, it could be they'll pay you the whole amount when you sign the contract. That's awesome. Or they pay you the whole amount at the end of the contract. That's awful. Or they pay you net 30. That means 30 days from when you invoice, or net 60, or net 90. Awful, very awful, very, very awful. Or I had one client, a Fortune 100, that Fortune 250, Fortune 500 at the time. They had, there was the most awful. They had net 120. So payment terms is cash flow. So if you don't negotiate favorable payment terms, you won't be having the cash to pay yourself and pay potentially people who are helping you deliver the service. So keep that in mind. Payment terms are really important. It's one thing to celebrate closing a deal, and then it's also very important to celebrate when the cash, when the check comes in, when the wire comes in. So keep that in mind. So but this is just a little bit of background about payment terms. And in that proposal video that I mentioned earlier on the channel, it's there are different ways to negotiate payment terms. And to summarize here, ideally get 50% upfront, 25% when you have the first deliverable, and then 25% as you complete the project, or maybe 50, 25, 15, 10, depending again on the scope of the project and how long. If you can finish everything in 1 week, maybe just get the initial deposit and then 50% at the end. But if the project is going to take 6 months or 4 months or 2 months, and you wait to get paid 30 days after you invoice at the end of the project, that means you won't get paid for 90 days. So you've financed the client's project and you need the cash. So keep that in mind. Payment terms are really important. So back to negotiation payment terms. So if you tell your clients that, hey, I come in and audit your HR practice, your HR department, your hiring practices, you have issues in retaining employees, employee dissatisfaction is high. I'll come in and audit and identify the issues, and then I'll provide recommendations. That's your scope. That's the project. And you quoted $10,000. So the client says, no, we can't do that. Now, when they say that, you don't have to drop the price right away. I do not want you to drop the price right away or try to negotiate. You really want to understand why they said what they said. What's behind this ask? Now, if you have a business owner of a small business, typically it's a cash flow issue. Typically, as they say, when you sell to small businesses, they're paying you out of their pockets. when you sell to businesses and large businesses, they're paying you out of their budgets, right? So small business owners might be more cash sensitive. They don't want to pay you now because of cash flow considerations. They don't mind the $10,000 that you quoted, but they don't have the money right now or in this quarter. So that could be the reason why they're pushing back on your amount. Now, if you're working with mid-sized companies, with larger companies, it could be that procurement, their purchasing department, has policies around certain amounts. Let's say, or finance. Let's say you're selling to the COO or to the VP of operations or to the head of HR, and they can only get $5,000 approved. You're pitching $10,000, and they're asking you for $5,000 because that's what they can get approved. So this is where digging a little bit deeper will tell you why they're asking for this discount, or why they're asking, they're recommending, or they're presenting a different price point. And then based on the why, you should be able to come back with an answer. Now, again, for those of you who are listening or watching live, unless you're driving, leave me a comment. Tell me, what would you do if someone says, we cannot do this amount, and we cannot pay you. We cannot pay you $10,000. Let's say in your proposal, you said $10,000 is the fee, and then I want $5,000 up front, and then $5,000 at the end of the project. So they said no to the amount. Later they said, no, we cannot do 50% up front. So what can you do? And if it's a mid-size or a larger company, it will require moving walls, moving mountains to change the payment terms. They won't. For bigger companies, it's set. They're not going to change their payment terms. So you as a consultant, you as a small business owner, you have to do something different. Again, I'm not asking you to reduce your price. I'm not asking you to reduce how you get paid, but to the extent that you can change the structure of the proposal so that you can get as much of that money upfront as you can within reason, then do that. So you can break the proposal maybe into two phases. There's an assessment, and then there's developing the recommendations. So potentially you can break the $10,000 into two $5,000 projects, and then that also reduces the scope of your work, and then you can get paid half of the $5,000. That's $2,500, and then get paid the rest of it once you're done with that first phase, and then you move to phase two. So you can break down the project into two phases. That's one approach. But if you're dealing with a small business owner, again, depending on the scenario, just tell them, okay, so what would work for you? I really can't bring down the $10,000 to $5,000 because just the work is so involved, and this is the value to your business. And they're convinced. So maybe they'll tell you, I'll pay you this amount over a 4-month period, $2,500 now, $2,500 in 3 weeks. And then every 3 weeks you get a check for $2,500. That's not ideal because you'll be done in 6 weeks, 7 weeks, but you've got the client, you've got an initial amount, and then you've got a client who is now, they feel that they've been heard. And that's what I talked about last week, about tactical empathy, about people, buyers want to feel that they are heard and they're understood. And that's really important. So before we change the price, before we change the payment terms, understand why they're asking for a discount, or why they're asking for a different payment term or payment schedule. And sometimes some people, I don't know, 25, 30%, half of the people, they just want to negotiate something. They feel good. And if that's the case, how do you counter that? They have like no, at least you can't assess why they're asking for a discount. They say, that's just how we do business. Again, you are a competent consultant. You're also a business owner. So you can counter very politely. It's not a war. Again, you can just tell them, in my practice with almost all of our clients, we always ask for 50% upfront because we put a whole lot of time and effort into the project upfront, and we'd like to cover our expenses. Most people are reasonable. Most people understand. And if you say it confidently and you're sincere about it, and you should be because it's your business, most reasonable people understand. All right. Now, also, before I forget, I do have a negotiation preparation checklist. I'll actually put it on the screen here after we cover the next couple of points before we end the session. So it's a free checklist. I want you to click on the link. I'll add that link to the description after the session, and then you can make your own copy. It's a Google Doc, and then you can customize it and use it. Please, please, please spend some time ahead of any sales interaction. There's some things you can do, those preparation points ahead of going to any networking event or before you send a proposal, and the things that I cover here that will help you negotiate on the fly when people ask you these questions in person, or if you're on a video call. If these things happen over email, you can always go and search, and you can check with ChatGPT and all that. You can go back to this video, or you can go back to the checklist, and then use that to help you provide an answer. But a lot of times you're negotiating in person, you're talking to someone, and you want to be ready and you want to be prepared. All right. So now the fourth negotiation practice: use honest scarcity. So this is where people think this is gimmicky, and you're trying to pull one on the customer, uh, but that's not what I mean here. Capacity is a real thing in consulting. If it's just you, there, even if you're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, there's only a set amount of hours. And if you have team members or maybe contractors, you also, at the end of the day, have a set amount of hours to deliver projects. And obviously you have to also do sales and marketing and back office and all that good stuff, right? So one thing you can say, and again, don't make this stuff up, but you can say, if someone is impressed by you, you've agreed on the price, you've agreed on the timeline, and now they're hesitating to moving forward. Maybe they want to do this next quarter or next year. They don't see the urgency. Now, as you know, one of my main rules here is time kills all deals. Time kills all deals. So the sooner you get back to a lead, the sooner you get back with a proposal, the sooner you work with the client to close the deal, the higher the likelihood you'll actually have a client. So any sort of delay, sometimes you can't control it. Timing is part of sales. You can do everything perfectly, but this is not the right timing to make that deal happen. It happens, but to the extent that you can, you follow up, you add value, you provide business, how your solution will save money or make them more money or improve client satisfaction. You do that, and you increase your likelihood of closing that deal. But for whatever reason, the client is still hesitating. So one thing you can do, one practice you can do, is say you're talking to Jim. Hey, Jim, I'm glad we've agreed on the scope, on the price, on the timeline. I just want to let you know that I'm working on a proposal for another customer, and they're likely to give me a go, no go in the next couple of days. And whoever gives me that go ahead signal or the signed contract first, they will basically get the priority for my schedule. So again, I'm very careful here. I don't want you to use this sort of willy-nilly and make things up, and oh, my team members are this and I have this trip, and if you start making things up, it will catch up with you. But if you can absorb the work, just let them know. Say, so this is the beginning of the quarter, this is the beginning of the month, we've cleared up our schedule, we're ready to take you on and onboard you and meet your timelines, and we'll, maybe throw in an incentive. You'll come on site, you'll meet with the other stakeholders in person, add things that they mentioned to you during the sales process that are important to them, that doesn't cost you a whole lot of time and money. So encourage them, incentivize them, and I have a bullet on incentivizing the client. This way, you let them know that that they'll get your attention, they'll get your timeline, they'll get the project worked on if they sign up with you soon. Another one I used to, when we started to have training, we sell training as a service. We were doing implementation at the time, analytics implementation, and we saw an opportunity to sell on-site training. We start to sell these $5,000 a pop a day, and then $10,000, and we were going to, my co-founder now, Eric, was our amazing trainer at the time, and we had training overseas, we had training here throughout the world. Actually, I went all over the planet teaching people and consultants on business and on analytics, and that was a pretty sizable revenue stream for us, which also led to implementation work. So it worked really well as its own revenue source, training that is, as well as a lead, sort of a top of the funnel for implementation services. So that's something you might want to consider. But the point here is that with having a trainer, and Eric was also the co-author of the book that we published with Wiley, the Google Analytics breakthrough that did really well. I would tell him that, hey, Eric has a training schedule, and he's going to be in Michigan this next quarter, next week, and then he's going to be there. So we have these 3 slots, and he's in hot demand. So secure the slot that works for you best, and that worked really well for us. Again, don't make things up. Um, it'll catch up with you, but do point out to the client that at the end of the day, you have time constraints and you have availability. It could be also if you have, like, people ask you, they want to work with you, the consultant, and maybe you have other team members. So a client says, yeah, I have availability, I have capacity. So if we sign next week, I'll be able to lead that project. If we sign 2 weeks from now, I'll be tied up with another project, so you'll work with my colleague. So again, don't mention this as sort of in a threatening tone, or like, go with us or your business will will go under, or I have these kind of, you're coming up with, making up reasons and why they should work with you. I mean, that's all gimmicky. I don't cover this kind of stuff. I don't like these kind of things, but do highlight the capacity issue. A lot of people, it resonates with a lot of people. All right. So now, point number 5, and just to make sure, I see few people coming in right now. So let me go back to my slide and show you what we've covered so far. Here you go. All right. So we covered, of the 7 practices, we've covered using a budgetary quote, defining the scope precisely, negotiating payment terms, then using honest scarcity, and then number 5, structure future promises. And that's really important. So what do I mean by that? So a lot of times when you're speaking with clients, they like you. Again, they want to work with you, but they want to get a good deal. So they start asking for concessions. Now, so one of them is, especially for mid-sized, larger clients, they might say, small businesses would say the following. They would say, give us a discount here, we'll do a whole lot more business with you in the future. That's one way to do it. Or to say that's one way they will approach you with negotiation. Another way they would say, I'll introduce you to my cousin, my in-law, my friend, so you have more business. That's another way. Now, when you go to larger companies, and this comes again from experience, all these stories, all these lessons are from the trenches. When we were working with a global brand, I won't go into the specifics here, but they had 20 plus other sister brands. And we were negotiating by that time with the VP. They really liked our team. We did a free audit, a mini audit, and they loved it. And they saw the value we can bring to their business. And we don't compete on price. We said we compete on the quality of the work. We compete on our responsiveness. We compete on how we enable your team to leverage the data. We were selling analytics at the time, and they loved us. They liked the logos we had, and then sort of last point in this negotiation on a call with probably 10 plus people from our side and their side, the VP said, hey, as you can tell, we love everything you're offering. We love you. The chemistry is there, but we can't proceed with this price point. And if you give us a discounted rate, we will introduce you to other sister companies. So here, in my mind, and my co-founders, we were on that call, like, okay, we're doing the math. Okay, if I'm making $100,000 on this deal times 20, my goodness, $2 million. So I don't know, not greed, but a huge opportunity. So that sounded really, really great. So went back, said, let us get back to you. And we agreed to the discount. It was a pretty hefty discount, pretty deep discount. we love them. They loved us. We did the work. We have a testimonial from them. We have their logo. So that's all great. The only problem here is that these introductions, those introductions to the sister companies, never materialized. Now, I'm not saying this VP was lying to us or did not want to deliver on their promise, but many things happen in business outside of their control. There was a company directive not to use this analytic solution. There were other internal politics. The person that they knew at these other sister companies, the people they knew at these other companies, they have moved on. So there are things outside of their control that have taken place that now eliminated this opportunity for us to get new introductions. So in this case, I want you to be entrepreneurial. I want you to offer a discount to close a deal and get this logo that's going to help a whole lot, sell a whole lot more business, a whole lot more projects. I want you to be entrepreneurial. But the lesson here is to do things a bit differently. Now, how would you do it differently? I mean, there are different approaches. One is you can qualify that this discounted rate that you're offering is for a limited amount of time. It's for the first 3 months, for example. Or you can say, let's keep keep the standard pricing at this point, and then apply the discount for future work after introductions produce business. Again, you say this not in a confrontational way, but you just let them know that you have a business to run and you have employees to pay and you have competing priorities. So you want to give them the focus, the attention, the right time from you and your team, and that's why you price how you price. So if someone is making some promises, listen to that. Make sure they're believable. If it sounds too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. But change things in the present. Don't just rely on the future. And again, I said a couple of ways to do it is by offering the discount later, or by offering the discounted rate just for that first implementation, so that if they come back to you, the same customer comes back to you with ongoing services, you know that introductory rate, that introductory discounted rate no longer applies for future work. This way you protect your margins. All right. So that is point number 5. Number 6, know who can actually negotiate. So not every person across the table, across the Zoom call, has the authority to change the agreement. So, I mean, you're the business owner or a co-founder, and you can make changes on the fly and say, okay, yes, I'll do this in 2 weeks instead of 3, and then I'll give you a 50% discount. That's your prerogative. But the person across the table, across the phone, across the email might love you. They're the champion who is singing your praises within the company because they think you can come in and solve this issue that's causing them a lot of gray hair, but they might not have the authority over a budget that is set by finance, or some procurement policies, or maybe they can't get IT to agree with you to come in and have access to their systems. So when it comes to these other things I mentioned, the non-price related issues could actually stop the deal in its tracks. So if you don't have, if legal is going to take 4 weeks to review your contract, in 4 weeks, that's going to delay the project by 8 weeks. So you have to find ways to convince them to move things faster, or maybe agree to a standard contract that they have. Because when you give them your contract, their legal team has to review it. But if you use their standard contract, it might not have all the favorable terms that you want, but you get the deal, you get the logo, you get the initial payment, right? So that's how you deal with these other scenarios. And I talked about those in the proposal email video that I mentioned earlier. But if it comes to pricing, if they say, we want 15%, a 15% discount because I think finance will approve it, before conceding, again, dig a little bit deeper. Understand why finance actually needs that discount? Is it again based on a policy or on a budget for this quarter? If it is a quarterly thing, again, this applies to larger companies. But if they can only spend this amount this quarter, then split the project into two phases or into two contracts. One contract for this quarter and another contract for the second quarter. This way, it's within the budget that finance has set up, right? And so if you can't, a lot of times in sales, they talk about gatekeepers, people who prevent you from speaking with the decision maker, the person who has the budget, the authority. Um, they know the urgency of the issue. All of that. If you're not talking to the person with the authority, then you have this intermediary, and then ideally, you want to speak with the decision maker. Now, it's not easy with all these things you see on YouTube. There are a lot of amazing tactics to get to the decision maker, and it's good to learn these. And for example, especially if the champion, the person that you are speaking with, and they like you, they want you to succeed. So you don't want that. You don't want to come across like you want to overstep their authority or you want to bypass them. No, you want them to be with you. So if they tell you, my boss is not going to agree to this because it's just a lot of work that could impact my schedule and I can't deliver. I can't promise you and promise my boss that I can do my existing work with this new project. So or they tell you that it's a budget issue, or it tell you that they're planning to go on paternity leave or maternity leave for 3 months. There could be all these legitimate reasons, but if you speak to their boss, maybe you can convince their boss to assign someone else to that project or work with their budget or work with their timeline, and the manager might have a different perspective on things, and they might be able to move things around to accommodate for this project. So to the extent that you can convince your main point of contact, your champion, to introduce you to these people who are involved in the decision-making process, do that. And again, I talk about that a lot in the proposal video. And the idea here is that at times you can. So you try your best. And if you can't get to these decision makers, you can have a one-pager part of your proposal that addresses the concerns of legal, finance, the executives, any other type of stakeholder, and any other type of stakeholder that you come to learn about from your interactions with your main point of contact, your champion. So to the extent that you can speak directly with the decision makers, with the help of that first point of contact, do it. The next best option is provide a one pager, or if you have a slide deck, maybe a couple of slides addressing the concerns that the legal team, the finance team, the executive team, the IT, they all have. IT say we will not give access to any third-party contractor unless they have these sort of certifications. If you are in that industry and in that segment and you have those certifications, make that part of the proposal. So then you put IT at ease. So the idea here is that figure out who the decision makers are and then address their concerns either in person or you do it over email, over your proposal document or your slide deck, or potentially you can do a video, like use Loom or one of these services where you can actually, and I like that, you can actually present in a very concise way. You can show them how you address their problems. Keep it short, keep it concise, and talk about how easy it is to work with you. All right, the last point, and let me show you the slide here. Just 1 second. Yep, right here. So we've covered the first 6, and the 7th one is trade. Don't automatically discount. And that is something, my goodness, I wish I had learned this early in my career. But basically, people ask for something. Think of ways you can help them without giving in on the price or the timeline or the scope. So if the client says, for example, I can't afford 20K today, or there's no way that finance or procurement will approve a $20,000 project. But if we bring it down to 17.5, I can get it approved tomorrow. I mean, if this is your first client, and go for it. Don't worry about the $2,500. But if you've been doing this for a little bit of time, I don't want you to just go for the sale right away. There's always a risk when you negotiate, you could lose a deal. Again, time kills all these, but at times it's worth applying some of these practices. So, for example, say, I hear you. If you're telling me that you can, you know, $20,000 won't work for you, how about if we add and then drop something that is of high value to the customer, and that it is, to the extent that you can, that doesn't require a lot of time and energy and cycles from you. And through your conversations with the lead, you should have been able to capture a lot about their pain points, their issues, internal politics. That's just part of the sales conversations and the sales process you've had. So with that knowledge, and then with the things that you have, you can trade something. So for example, say we can keep the project at 75 at 17.5, and then have a line item that's for $2,500. So for you still got the $20,000 project, but I can include in that $2,500 office access to office hours for between 10 and noon every Tuesday. Your team can jump on a call and ask me any question they have. I can come in and do on on-site training. I can do a webinar for your remote workers. I can do a presentation to the executives. I can do a video on how to maintain whatever that you are building. I can offer you a no charge post project support for 2 months, right? All of these are things that, yes, will take a little bit more of your time and effort, but you secured more revenue upfront. And more revenue upfront, that means more cash flow upfront. That means a healthier business. So instead of saying yes to a discount right away, think of things you can trade, especially if things that you've done before, things that you've packaged that are doesn't require a lot of cycles from you, but are of value to the client. So that is the seventh point, and that is on trade. Do not immediately jump to discount, and don't automatically discount. So here are, I want to show you a couple of things here before we wrap it up. One is, you see it here on my screen. Those are the 7 points. Again, if you want those slides, this one here about the 7 practices, or oops, where's the other one? Right here. Or the 5 things to prep for negotiation. Don't hesitate to leave me a comment or email me at info@startupwithferris. I'll be more than happy to send you these. And then I'll include a link in the description to this. Let me make it larger so I can walk you through it quickly. This is the negotiation preparation checklist. So I want you to spend some time on it before you start, as you're selling, as you're networking, as you're marketing your services. Start putting down some of the basic information, and then for every client situation, understand what matters to them, and then their buying process, who approves, the proposal, set your boundaries, all of that. So these points I covered today and I covered last week, I turned them into a template that you can use to help you get ready for negotiation, and then also negotiating a win-win deal for you and for the client. And before we leave, if you go back to the channel, this is actually what I wanted to mention earlier. Here you see, this is actually, I had this summary 32-minute video on negotiation in general, but the video that I referenced earlier was about the proposal. This is the proposal system that works. It's an hour and 4-minute video with a lot of details on all the details you need, a step-by-step guide on winning proposals. I included 2 AI assistants that can help you, one using Google Gemini's notebook and one with ChatGPT that you can use to generate a proposal for you with some input, but it'll guide you through the whole process. And if you're still thinking about starting a company and you're not sure, you haven't taken the leap, then this video is for you, is for you for certain. The ultimate guide to starting a consulting business. Check it out. And a lot of tools, a lot of video, a lot of tools, a lot of worksheets, a lot of templates. That's what I usually do with these ultimate guides. And if you're struggling in other areas of the business, check out the channel. I think you'll find a lot of helpful content. And if you are finding this content helpful, I appreciate that you subscribe, share it with others, and hit the like button. That means a lot to me. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.